Hello, my friends. Jacob is here again. Yeah, it's Tuesday. That's right. It's time for another show. And I'm so happy that you are joining me, that you have pressed play, and that you have subscribed to the channel, and you are made me a very happy man by being here with me, because today is an important day. I have something that is very mind-blowing. It may not be for everybody. So some of you, after the opening, you're going to find out that I'm going to ask you maybe to just mosey on and wait till the next video, because this ain't for everybody. But this show, if you all do give it a chance, it really is meant for everyone, and it can actually set you free. We're talking about the 10 plagues of Egypt. That's right. These plagues that set Israel free. There is more to this story than meets the eye. There's more to every single story, much like the boy who cried wolf. If you pay too much attention to the literal story about the literal boy and the literal wolf, you miss the bigger story, the bigger picture, which is important. And this story is no different. Now, I'm not saying that these plagues didn't literally happen. I'm not saying that there wasn't a literal story behind it, but what I am saying is that there is evidence hidden, tucked away in Scripture, and over the years I have uncovered it, if you will, and every single one of these plagues actually details something extraordinary. And when you piece them all together, you realize these plagues are actually meant to bless every single one of us. They are meant to take every single one of us out of the lie that we've been living in, out of the slavery of Egypt, and into the promise that we are more than we know. I gotta tell you, it's gonna blow your mind. It's for the scholars and for the believers and for the non-believers. It doesn't matter. The story is beautiful, and the revelation behind it, the insight behind it, the apocalypse, the unveiling of what it means is going to change you forever. So buckle up, people, because we're taking on the 10 plagues of Egypt today. So now look, I know that whenever you deal with something like this, people think that it's a religious thing, and this show this is not a religious show. This is a story that we've all heard, glorified by Charlton Heston. Well, those plagues that led up to that, the plagues that helped to set Israel free from Pharaoh and from Egypt, there are plagues too. Now you say, no, Jacob, that can't be true. Well, yeah, it is. I want to talk, remember last time I talked about the meaning of things and names and how they have meaning? Well, let's take a look at the main players here. You have God, you have Israel, which, by the way, the name Israel in Hebrew, it is a beautiful name. It is a very important name. It means God prevails. Pharaoh in Hebrew means great house, but it gets very interesting in Greek because it actually means nakedness, their nakedness, his nakedness. And when you understand that nakedness is symbolic of shame, things start to kind of come together. When you understand that Israel means God prevails, Pharaoh means their nakedness. Remember Adam? He was ashamed of his nakedness. Well, that's really what it means. It's that we were all slaves to our shame. I mean, each and every single one of us, we are just plagued and we become slaves and we are miserable because we're ashamed of things, ashamed of who we are, ashamed of what we've been through, ashamed to speak the truth, which is why so many people lie. And so in this story, Israel, God prevails over their shame. In Isaiah chapter 30, verse 3, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame. There you are again, right? Now listen to the next part of the verse. And the trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. So Egypt is actually symbolic of a person's confusion. We don't know the truth. We're tracked. Actually, the word Egypt means like entrenchment. It's actually almost like a prison. And Israel, they were a slave there. And what do? They were just beaten down, and they were forced to take the muck and the mire, and they were just constantly forced as slaves to build up this confused, shameful system. And isn't that what all of us are doing, right? Isn't that what we all feel like? Don't we all feel like slaves, right? Try to get that dollar bill, y'all. All building up the system of shame and confusion. So, God's people, who are they, right? A lot of people are going to say, oh, it's the literal Israel. Well, if you read scripture enough, you understand that it's not. It has nothing to do with the literal anything. Israel is just symbolic of God's child. In the Old Testament, Israel is the begotten son of God. Now, I know that in the New Testament, Jesus is called the only begotten son, but Israel is also a name for God's child. Look it up. Israel is not one simple person. It's not one single person. It's not just Jacob Israel. He wasn't the only one named Israel. Israel was everyone, because in Abraham, in the story, all nations were blessed because of one man's sacrifice. Everyone became part of this glorious thing called the kingdom. The problem is, Israel somewhere along the line became slaves. So God had to set them free. And how did he do it? He sent Moses. You know what Moses means? Isn't that crazy? Moses means to draw out. So let's go into these 10 plagues. And you're going to find out that these plagues, we're already being plagued by them. And we're already being motivated and moved out of the muck and mire of Egypt. And we're being pushed towards the promised land, which is life and peace and hope. Listen to Exodus 9. I will at this time send all my plagues upon your heart. Didn't say Egypt. It says upon your heart and upon your servants and upon your people, that they may know that there is none like me in all the earth. God is speaking directly to the one that is holding everyone captive. So these plagues are sent to the heart of man. The very first plague, water into blood. Now you got to understand the Nile, that was their source of life. You know, the Nile was basically everything. Everything you could think of, the Nile was it. A lot of people even worship the Nile. So, you know, having it being turned into blood was not really a great thing. I will smite with the rod, which just means authority, that in my hand upon the waters which are in the river, many waters in a river. See, that's a clue for you. All these little things that are hidden away, they're clues. Waters, when you go to Revelation, you find out the waters in Revelation 17 that the whore sits upon, the whore of Avalon, are all the peoples and the multitudes and the nations. It's everyone. So God is really smiting all the people, the waters of the river, which are in the river, they shall be turned into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the river will stink, and the Egyptians will not be able to drink of its water anymore. This is really symbolic of the way our life has been. So the way we've been living our life, the way we've been drawing our life source from, you know, everything that we consider to be life, everything that we consider to be our life, guess what? Somewhere along the line, it starts to stink, right? It starts to stink. It changes. There's no more life in it. We're like, we can't live this way anymore. And it bothers us. So what do a lot of people do at that point? A lot of people go because they don't know where to go, right? Unless they've come to my video and they realize they don't got to go anywhere, but they just need to go into the, into the corner or into a closet or just on their own and just say, teach me the truth, and start to seek. And they'll find a lot of people go to religion. A lot of people go to churches because they've been brainwashed and conditioned to do such. Look what happens next. Plague number 2. So your life starts to stink. Things are not what they seem to be. You realize, I got to change something. I can't find life there anymore. I got to go somewhere else. The next plague, frogs. See, in Egypt, which means confusion. When we're confused about the truth, there is no knowledge of the truth, so we can't know the truth. So in Egypt, it's hard, right? We have to break free. We got to be set free from, being a prisoner of our shame and our fear and our misery, and we got to move on. So we think the best way to do this is to turn to religion. Now, frogs are symbolic of religion. That's right. false prophets, actually. Out of the mouth of the false prophet come frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly. So, you're looking for a way out, right? And then what are you doing? Out of that river, out of the way things are, out of the nations and the world and all the peoples and all the nonsense. Abundant frogs everywhere we go. And these frogs, now listen to where they go, right? Because this is telling. They shall come into your house. They shall come into your bedchamber, upon your bed, into the house of your servants. They shall come into your ovens. They shall go into your kneading troughs. Basically, these frogs are going to come into every single area of your life. Croaking, croaking, croaking. Isn't that exactly what religion does? Once you turn to it, it basically comes into every single area of your life, and it becomes almost a plague, if you will. Because now you got to live by these religious rules. Now, you started off hating your life, but now you realize, oh my God, God hates me too, because I'm this miserable, terrible person and I don't deserve anything. And I know that's what everyone has been taught. God sets us free from that. That's the point. These frogs, this is a plague upon man. These frogs, they get in everywhere, and all they do is croak. Now listen to Revelation 16. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs that came out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. The frogs are unclean spirits. Spirit, I told you, they're thoughts. Lies. Lies about everything. Lies about, about God, about your life, about everything. Plague number 3, lice. The Lord said to Moses, say unto Aaron, stretch out your rod and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, if you remember correctly, Adam was formed from the dust of the earth. They're symbolic of religious liars and religious teachers and, the false prophets, if you will, of the world, getting into every area of our life. Now we have to deal with the lice, because now the frogs, they point it out. They point out all the things that are wrong with you, and it becomes a torment to you. I know many of you, right? You beat yourself up. You beat yourself up over these things that you've done wrong, or these things that you think you're doing wrong, or these things that you're condemned by. All of these things, they suck the life out of you. Lice. These religious lies, they latch hold onto us and they suck our lives dry. And then the next thing that happens, this is the important one, is the flies. At this point in our life, we may have bought the religious lie hook, line, and sinker. And we may believe everything these religious leaders have told us, and then all of a sudden we find their folly. And becomes pretty foul. I don't know how many of you have seen very, very passionate religious men and women and leaders of the faith fall. They get caught in this and they get caught in that. And you find out, people who came out like, I don't want to use names, but people who have come out against this lifestyle, turn out that they were living that lifestyle. People who condemn others for this, turns out that's exactly what they're doing. So these flies, right, they become another plague onto us, and they lead us, trying to get us to get away from this nonsense, which leads us to number 5, which is the disease of the beasts. I want to remind you that every single animal in Scripture, you ever hear of being sly as a fox? Don't let the little foxes spoil the vine. Every single animal, an ox is worthy of his hire, all symbolic of natures within mankind. And so this disease of the beasts, Okay? They're leading up to something. So when God decided to kill off every single beastly nature of the Egyptians and every single beast of Israel decided to save, we're talking about something here, because Israel means God prevails. So every nature of God, every nature of truth, every nature of love is preserved. But every nature, every beast of Egypt is killed off and dies. Which brings us to number 6. Now, as I go down this list, it's going to become more and more apparent. It gets very, very cool. Boils. A lot of fun, right? The boils. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast. Once again, throughout all of Egypt. Now, in the book of Lamentations, we find out how important boils are. A boil will tell you if someone is leprous or not. A boil will tell you whether or not you should stay away from that person or not. These boils, if you will, it's when you get a little bit more mature in your walk, you start to realize what natures are, beneficial to you and what natures are not. What doing one thing in your life, like hating others or condemning others, becomes almost a boil to you, and you start to see this. That every beast, every nature in you, everything that starts to produce a boil, you say, you know what, I got to cut ties with this. I got to get it away from me. And so you start moving away from things that are actually hurting you, and you start embracing things that are not. And this leads you to number 7, plague number 7, which is hail. Now this is cool, because at this point in your walk, you're already starting to become a little more spiritually mature. You probably at this point, you've left religion and you realize that you need to go, right to that mountain. There's a great passage where, God says, tell the people to come to me. I want to talk to them. I want to be one-on-one with them. But the people are like, I don't want to go to the mountain, Moses. You go, and then you tell us what God says, because if I go to the mountain, I got to die. So in other words, man doesn't really want to sacrifice anything. He doesn't want to really sacrifice he doesn't want to really study. He doesn't want to seek. He just wants someone to tell him what to do. And so, and that's what Israel's problem was to begin with. They wanted a king. They wanted someone to rule over them. And that's, you get what you want. And then what ends up happening was God sends, he sends them a king. And he says that when you get this person, they're going to take 1/10 of your labor. You talk about that tithe, right? You're going to take 1/10. They're going to send your men off to war. You're going to make your women do meaningless tasks. Hey, you want someone to tell you all about your spirituality? You want someone to tell you about where you should be going in life? You want someone to lead you? Well, guess what? Fine. You'll get that, but this is what you're going to get in return. It's going to become almost a plague to you, and that's what happens when you don't seek for yourself. Every single one of us doesn't need someone to lead them. We don't need to go to a pastor or a reverend or a priest. I'm not saying don't. I'm not saying leave your congregation. Hear what I'm saying. I'm saying you don't need to. I think it's wonderful to gather together. Scriptures say that you should never forsake the assembling together, and a lot of people say that means go to church. It doesn't. We're assembling together right now. It means that you should never forsake becoming, one with others, loving your neighbor and breaking bread with them, breaking inspiration with them, breaking truth with them, breaking wisdom with them, and sharing with them, as I'm sharing with each and every one of you. So hail becomes the next one, because we've now kind of turned our back. We're now seeking the truth. And what does this hail do? Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain, a grievous hail such as never been seen in Egypt since the foundation even until now. And Isaiah helps us to make what that hail is very, very clear. It's actually the voice of God, the truth of God. You start to hear the truth. And I'm not talking about literally hear. You start to know. You start to become inspired, and you're led through that wilderness into that promised land, which is waiting for each and every one of us. The voice of God, the truth. And you got to understand something. You can't look at it through the lens of some kind of vengeful, hateful God. Look, lightning is a beautiful thing, and it illuminates in an instant. Fire devours things, and it plows down those things that are bad, and it makes way for things that are new. All of these things are actually blessings in disguise, because if you remember correctly, It was all of these plagues that helped Israel to become set free. Moving on from hail, which we now know is now you've left all the nonsense. Now you're actually seeking. Now you start hearing, right? And all of that stuff in Egypt is starting to get destroyed around you. You don't need it anymore. The old life, the old ways, your confusion, you're not being confused anymore. But now the locusts come. They shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remains unto you from the hail. In other words, all the crap that's in your life, all the bad stuff that's in your life, all the lies that have deceived you and led you down the wrong road. Well, if the voice of God, if the hail, if the truth, if the inspiration of the truth of love hasn't gotten rid of it all, the locusts are going to come and they're going to devour it. All the stuff that's keeping you a slave to your confusion and your shame and your suffering, you're going to be set free from it. The next thing, now Paul knows this one well, plague number 9, complete darkness. At this point in our walk, all the nonsense has been torn away, right? We're no longer putting our faith in the ways of the world. We're no longer putting our faith in the flesh. We're no longer condemning ourselves for nonsense. We're no longer being ruled by the croaking nonsense of those religious leaders. But now, complete darkness. And what is darkness? When you are in complete darkness, you realize you know nothing at all. Paul had that happen to him when he was knocked down, face into the earth. Thought he knew it all, and then he knew nothing. And he was blind until 3 days later, after being led to the truth by the prophet, began to see. It's an allegory. It's a wonderful, beautiful metaphor. All of this literally happened, sure, but also a metaphor. Scripture says it right there. All these things are allegory. Here is where it gets totally interesting. Plague number 10. It sounds like a terrible plague, and this is why a lot of people say, I can't believe in a God, because a God that would kill the firstborn child of anything, a God that would do this. Well, when you understand that the firstborn in Egypt is not a literal child. Now, I'm not saying that the children didn't die, but I'm saying when you understand that it's not a literal child that dies, it's the firstborn in Egypt. It's the first idea of you. That first man that was formed in the dust of the earth, that idea of who you are, but you are not, that lie, that ego. That's the firstborn that dies. That's the firstborn that's put to death. That's why you need to be born again, right? Because the real you, the truth of you, the real you, the one that lives life, the one that creates in life, the one that is more than they ever believed possible, is not that firstborn of Egypt. And so the first man killed off. The first of every living creature in Egypt killed off. And what happens at that point? Israel is set free. You know, when the idea of who you think you are, I know a lot of people actually, there was a time when I hated myself. Now, I've told people about this. There was a time when I was miserable. There was a time when I wanted to kill myself. There was a time when I used to cut myself. I really was a mess because I believed the lies. And I looked at my life as if it was my past, which it isn't. We are more than our past. And we are not what people say that we are. We are more. God prevails, and God will prevail in each and every one of your lives. Whatever you want to call that God, there is more, people. I know you feel it. Whether you're a believer or not, you don't need to be anything. But if you have a desire to live a better life, if you have a desire because you know that you're meant for more, let these plagues take hold, and don't curse the things that are happening to you in your life, but realize they're pushing you towards the mark of the high calling. Each and every one of us is meant for more, and we are going to find that day. The promised land awaits, people. So it's about time to be happy and rejoice in a new day. I hope that each and every one of you enjoyed this. I know that it wasn't what everybody on this channel really is crazy about, but I think it has value, and I hope each and every one of you subscribe, and I love each and every one of you, and I will see you again next Tuesday. Bye-bye.